Good afternoon. It's Dr. Dawn, Psych MD, your most influential double-boarded child, adolescent, and adult psychiatrist. I'm also an internationally recognized ADHD expert. I help moms and their ADHD children champion their ADHD. Welcome to another Facebook Live segment. Hello. Hi, Regina. Thanks for tuning in. Today, I actually have the opportunity and the absolute pleasure of bringing to you a 14-year-old's perspective on ADHD. This 14-year-old, to protect their privacy, actually gave me permission to share his experience and what it's like to have ADHD. This is something that he wrote October of last year, and something that he holds near and dear to his heart, and something he wanted to educate and inform the community about. And so I'm very proud of this person because he's actually opened up himself, allowed himself to be vulnerable, allowed himself to educate and inform information about ADHD using his own life's experience. And what better opportunity to learn from our children? What better opportunity to understand what they're going through when they have a disorder that most don't understand or say they don't understand? This is a disorder that affects most kids who have mental health conditions, 6.5 million, and also 10 million adults. Majority are not even aware. So today I will share with you an expert from a 14-year-old who actually titled his journal entry an explanation. In 5th and 6th grade, I was suicidal. My grades were well around 70 or below. I couldn't get my work done and I didn't do well with people. My parents and my teachers were completely confused. They knew I was smart, yet I was failing half of my classes. And I couldn't control some of my own actions. My dad kept pushing me, telling me there is no excuse for failure, and took away my favorite things, thinking the problem was that I was just a lazy person and I needed more motivation. From IQ tests to many doctors, we tried everything until we found Dr. Brown and understood what was wrong with me. Who would have known that I had it? It is more common in teens and elementary level children versus suicide and depression, a disability that even causes some to develop more mental illness issues and disorders. A lot of you are probably wondering, and I put this in, what disability I'm talking about. That disability is known as ADHD, or what commonly is known as ADHD. Although ADHD isn't extremely hard to understand, most people don't know what ADHD truly is. One of the most common misconceptions about ADHD is that it can't be a severe condition. It is only a disorder and not a disability. It just makes you hyper. But those who have it know the real struggle. To understand someone's struggle, you must understand what causes it. ADHD is a chronic condition that is usually recognized as its persistent hyperactivity, inattention, and impulsivity. There are 3 types of ADHD, type 1, type 2, and type 3. Not only are there several types of ADHD, but the severity of ADHD varies greatly and affects some more than others. ADHD doesn't make it where you can't focus at all. It just makes it where you can't focus on subjects and objects that are uninteresting to you. In fact, ADHD allows you to focus better on things that you find interesting. This is known as hyperfocusing, or the ability to focus intently on an object of interest, sometimes so intently that the rest of the world becomes oblivious to that person. The catch for this advantage? Well, it's extremely difficult to control it. People with ADHD also have difficulties managing and learning how to control their emotions. This means that they appear slow to switch gears while working, and other times they can't switch gears at all. They will easily become sad or happy over trivial matters, have trouble calming down, and more to the point where ADHD is sometimes confused or connected to bipolar disorder. Although I could go on and on about the different symptoms and effects of ADHD, I look back at the topic. I chose the struggle of ADHD to create my topic today for my journal entry. The problem, misconceptions of ADHD and the mental and physical abuse people that they experience who have ADHD. The cause, the failure of the public education system and the lack of understanding of ADHD. And lastly, the effect, the mistreatment of people with ADHD, lives being ruined, in some cases suicide. I want to stop here briefly because this journal entry actually turned into a debate that my patient shared on his debate team. And he's in ninth grade. And this topic of debate, the cause, the failure of the public education system, and the lack of understanding of ADHD, and lastly, the effect, the mistreatment of people with ADHD, lives being ruined, and in some cases suicide, was his topic of the debate. I will go on and proceed with what he said. The public education system is meant to improve our society, making us more civilized, more informed, and more intelligent society. But we always focus on what we're learning and what we forget, what we should have learned until we're out of the system. Most school districts teach us about the dangers of scoliosis, what it is, signs of it, and eventually they screen you for it. Why don't they do the same for ADHD? ADHD is 4 times more common than scoliosis in kids, and it is more likely to lead to death. We could save lives by informing kids of the symptoms of ADHD and when it is good to see a doctor. In school, they preach the dangers of taking drugs. Although ironically, the public education system forces 6.1 of American children, or 4.5 million children, to take drugs for their ADHD. Along with that, about 90% of children with ADHD develop another type of mental disorder. But not because of ADHD itself, but because of the harsh treatment and conditions children with ADHD face. This includes anxiety, depression, trauma, and many more on a lengthy list. Another area where the public education system fails us is that they don't tell children with ADHD that they can receive special education. This means children with ADHD are left in an environment where they can only focus on one object, but must focus on 4 whole subjects to achieve success, unless by some chance they happen to search it up online. This means that there is a lack of communication between the public education system and parents that costs some dearly, which leads me to my next point. The next cause of our problem is the lack of understanding from society. It is hard to understand what someone is going through or experiencing if you haven't gone through it yourself, or if you don't truly understand what you're going through. The same can be said for ADHD, where most people don't understand ADHD and don't know what the people who have it are going through. To further prove my point, some people with non-severe ADHD don't understand why some people with ADHD, which is severe, are so hyper, which means even some people with ADHD don't understand what it truly is. When it comes to my parents, they will tell their child they need to work harder and that there is no excuse for failure. This means when the child messes up once, they are likely to not stop messing up. They hyper-focus on what could happen to them or what their parents could take away from them, and then before they know it, they just miss their geometry notes. This leads to a cycle of failure and mental abuse rather than the intended result, which is success. The fact that some of the parents who want their children with ADHD to succeed, yet are the cause of their failure, proves that we need to understand and analyze the problem. When it comes to teachers, they also attempt to push their students to success, but what some don't see is that they're just pushing students with ADHD further from it. I've seen that if you say that if you have ADHD, most teachers will say there are no excuses for this assignment not being done. The fact that teachers see a disability as an excuse is sad and puts students in a position where they think they're stupid, unsuccessful, and that there is no escape. You would not blame someone who's mentally insane for not seeing reality correctly. You would not blame someone with no legs for not being able to run well. Are those excuses? No, which is why you should not blame someone for struggling to live in a world that doesn't accommodate their symptoms. A solution for such a big problem seems difficult, but really it isn't. The solution to our problem is less complex and detailed than our problem, causes and effects. In fact, the solution to our problem is quite simple. To help children with ADHD, we must push the public education system to inform students and teachers about common disabilities such as ADHD. Keep teachers on the lookout for signs of ADHD in students and try to accommodate for certain symptoms. Things such as working out and music have shown to be effective nootropics and relieve symptoms of ADHD. If students could listen to music on low volume in the classroom, it would increase the amount of information learned, lead to a better and more focused environment for students. Informing students and teachers of ADHD would allow ADHD to not have as many misconceptions as it does, help students recognize if they possibly have it, and would help students with ADHD know ways that they could work around it, using their cursed blessing to succeed instead of failing. Teachers watching for signs of ADHD would allow students to be better and more accurately diagnosed. Sometimes my dad still says the words, "There is no excuse for failure," calls me lazy and blames me for the small mistake I make, which is him trying to get me to do better. But why should this misunderstanding of a subject emotionally damage me? By informing people that what ADHD is and how it works, maybe we can have a world where people with ADHD excel and ADHD can be seen as a gift. You may think that you can't blame people for not understanding something. Yet I find myself believing they do, because they stand and say ADHD is not an excuse, and blaming us for being born with a condition that might make us easily distracted, unable to focus, and impulsive. Remember what I say here, because if you're going to leave here today not only learning one thing, let it be that ADHD is not an excuse, but an explanation. All right? So that was the ideas of a 14-year-old, a ninth grader, who lives with ADHD every single day. He recognizes that this is a disorder that is commonly not understood, not well understood by different support systems in our society. One major support system he recognizes is the educational school system. And he actually gives ideas on how students with ADHD may be in a position to where they can learn better by incorporating music, for example. He also recognizes that one of his other support systems, such as a parent, may not necessarily understand ADHD. He also makes it apparent that it's explanations given by children his age and also his peers, even adults, that do have ADHD, that we need to speak more and more outwardly about it. Because we can educate the community about a disorder that not only should be seen as a disorder, shouldn't be seen as a disorder, but actually as a superpower if you just manage it correctly. He also recognizes that the society, maybe coaches, maybe other family members, peers, that, there's still a misconception in our world, in our society, that ADHD is a myth, that it's not real. But again, it is very real. And he's proven his point, how real it is, that he actually was suicidal at one point. He actually experienced mood symptoms. He actually had difficulties in maintaining friendships. He actually isolated himself. He was misunderstood. And all of this because of disorder that people didn't understand, and potentially he didn't understand himself. But today, after I leave you today with this journal entry from a 14-year-old, which turned into a debate at his school, that I'm so proud that he was able to share. That if you recognize that ADHD not only affects 6 million children, not only affects 10 million adults, that is very real in our society, that it has its causes and effects, and it also has its consequences if it's not recognized and managed. Consequences that he's pointing out, such as drug use, consequences as failures in school, consequences I'll point out, such as multiple job failures, multiple struggles in relationships, multiple self-defeating thoughts, that it could definitely lead to severities in life that we may experience if we do not recognize it, treat it, and continue to share our testimony with the world that it is real. You're not the only one out there that has it, especially a 14-year-old child. If they can do it, then I know that we can as well. So I wanted to share with you a personal story that I felt very dear to my heart, a child that is exceptional with his words. And again, I appreciate his permission to share it with you today. A 14-year-old that understands how real ADHD is and wants to share that with you today. So thank you so much for joining. That's all I have for you today. Make sure that you share this with your Facebook community. Let's keep the mental health movement going. And let's rectify that ADHD is not a myth, but that it's very real. Talk to you soon.